It was day after Thanksgiving in '43, and we were attacked by German planes. Well, we were under attack for, I'd say, maybe an hour. That would be pretty close. They couldn't hit us from altitude dropping their bombs. They kept missing. They couldn't get too close because our destroyers were firing at them. And there was a rocket gun on the ship we was on. And when it go out, it just seemed like a bomb had hit the ship. Now, it was a German bomber called the Henkel. They carried a kind of like a robot plane. It was a bomb on wings, and it was controlled by radio. And they were about maybe 5 miles from the ship, and they let that bomb go, and they guided it right into our ship. And we were the only ones out in the convoy that was hit. The rest of the convoy continued on. That's the rules on convoys. None of them stops for anything. They've got to continue on. Well, there was a few destroyers picked a few of the soldiers that had gone in the water at that time. But I was down at the bottom of the ship when the bomb hit. I knew the stairway up. The lights had all gone out. The bomb had hit the engine room, and it was dark. I made my way up the stairs, on deck. On deck, there was quite a bit of confusion. Officers were just panicked, just like the rest of them, I guess. It just seemed like most of the guys panicked right away. Why, I don't know. I stayed on board for a while. Others were getting off. They were trying to drop some of the lifeboats. The Indian crew, instead of staying there and help to lower those boats, they had already jumped ship. They had dumped a lot of the rafts overboard while the ship was still moving, because a ship that size with the momentum would go a half a mile or more before they stopped. Well, a lot of the life rafts were behind the ship, and some of the Indian crew had got on some of them, and some were just left out there afloat. Well, the soldiers were trying to get the lifeboats down and didn't know how. Just before the bombing, just before the ship was hit, we had orders for everyone to put their life jackets on. When we came up on deck with our life jackets, that's when the confusion was taking place. I stayed on until ship started to burn. There was trace of bullets coming out the hatch, and I thought, well, it's about time to leave. There was a rope on the side of the ship that I seen, and I went down that rope and got in the water. When I got in the water, I felt safe then. I started swimming away from the ship because I knew that ship's going to go down pretty quick. Now, the bombing started right about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we were under the attack for approximately an hour. And about 5, and it was just getting, well, it wasn't dark yet, but it was getting that way. When I got up on deck after the bombing, I was with the rest of them up on there. We all had life preservers, and there was a lot of confusion. The officers were just as much confused as the rest of us. Well, it didn't bother me so much because I knew I'm going to go to the water pretty quick, and I'm a fair swimmer, and I wasn't worried. When I hit the water, I felt safe, where others would panic, as I found out later. Now I'm in the water, swimming away from the ship, and the waves were tremendous. The wind was blowing. The white caps would slap at you, would get you wet. The wind would blow that moisture over you, and it was absolutely unbearably cold. Well, I kept exercising. I kept my legs going, and I kept my arms going. One of my legs would cramp, I'd change off to the other one. My arms didn't cramp. I didn't have any problem there, but I was really cold. waiting around in that water to be rescued. You never know how soon you're going to be rescued. So I came up to a lifeboat that had, maybe say a dozen men standing in it. But the boat was underwater, but it still had buoyancy, and they were standing in that water in the boat. I heard them cursing, some were praying, and I thought that's not a good place for me to go. They'll probably kill each other. They were panicked. So I moved away. During the night, it must have been about 10:30 or 11, I ran into four people that I knew. Some were in my squad. One of them was Cranston, and he kept hollering, "Mark, help me! Mark, help me!" So I swam over, he was about 15 feet from the other three. And I got there and I said, "Well, Cranston, why aren't you moving your arms and your legs, exercise to keep warm?" He says, "I can't." Well, I thought he was too far gone, man. I didn't know what to do. I had an extra life preserver that I had picked up in the water during the night, because there were a lot of them floating around. And I put that life preserver under his arm and put his chin on the other, and I swam away. I said, there's nothing I could do. I was already about gone myself. When I got back to where those other three were, we talked for a little while, maybe a half hour or so. Then there was a destroyer, a British destroyer that had came in from Algiers and picking survivors. They were flashing the light across the water. I felt pretty good. I figured, well, I'll make it now. Just about that time, somebody, one of them, got a hold of me, and we went down. He must have panicked. And I managed to break loose, and I swam around the ship and got picked up on the other side. Well, those others, they must have all panicked. I wasn't there to find out, but none of them were saved. They all were dead. Well, while I was there at the ship, a British sailor, I think there were two of them up on deck, they threw a rope down for me. I got a hold of the rope, and I thought there was nothing to it. I just grabbed a hold of the rope, and I thought they'd pull me up. Well, the rope went right through my hands like butter. I didn't know I was that weak. So the sailor says, "Bloat, wrap that rope around your hand, we'll pull you up." Well, he threw the rope back down, I wrapped it around my hand, and up I came. And I was so weak I couldn't stand. I didn't realize that I was that weak. I thought I was pretty fair shape. I couldn't stand. They helped me down to the quarters where the British sailors had their hammocks. And they put me in a hammock and wrapped me up, took all my wet clothes off and wrapped me up in blankets and gave me hot tea. I didn't sleep any that night. That was about midnight. I didn't sleep any. We landed in Phillipsville. That's a little seaport on the African coast, in Algeria, I should say. Well, anyway, we stayed at the British rest area, and they had a canteen there, and we had tea and little cookies and one thing and another. They furnished us with some of the clothing that the British, I would say, maybe something similar to the USO. The British had civilian clothes donated, and they furnished us enough to get by. Now, some of the boys were taken to Bougie, some were taken to Bone, and I think the hospital was at Bougie. I'm not sure. But anyway, a truck came by the British camp there where we were, and they had orders to pick any one of us that wanted to go to the hospital if there was something wrong with us. Some of them left, they went. How bad they were off, I don't know. Now, some of us, we weren't hurt. We were cold, we were sick, but we were enjoying the hot tea that the British were giving us and some cookies or whatever. And so we stayed. Well, those that went got the Purple Heart, and those that didn't go didn't get it. The loss of that ship was 1,000 and plus. I don't know how much, but it was a little over 1,000. Now that was one of the greatest disasters in the history of our nation, of one ship going down with that many losses.